Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. My name is Brian. Today we're going to go over the college football week for week 12, including starting off with the Michigan Northwestern game. Um, so obviously, last week Michigan had a bye, and I believe I put Michigan versus week 11, meaning obviously they were on a bye. And in theory, Michigan beat the bye week. They went up in the rankings from 21 to 18th. So in some ways, yes, Michigan won, even though they didn't play, in in a manner of speaking, so to speak. But in reality, Michigan has to be careful that they don't overlook Northwestern. Northwestern has they are 5-4, so obviously they're more than happy to upset any team put in front of them. So going into this upcoming week against Northwestern, they are playing at home or in Chicago, home of Northwestern, Wrigley Field. So that's going to be present some unique challenges. Have they beat Northwestern many, many, many times? Absolutely. Do I think they will this time? Absolutely. I think it could be a close game, but at the same time, I do think Michigan, especially defensively, will dominate this game. Obviously, I've gone ad nauseum on how Bryce Underwood needs to get better. And he's learned how to pass the ball as opposed to just throwing it. And I think that, as has been the case with many times this season so far, Michigan's run game will carry them. I have I'm not saying I gave up on the idea, but I think Michigan's passing game has is a distant second on the chart of priorities at this point. Now, do I think that could change? Absolutely. Anytime that could change. And do I hope it does? Absolutely. But Michigan wide receivers have not proven to be the game changers that we had hoped. Now, that being said, Donovan McCulley is amazing. Let's not take away from any of the individual efforts that they have given. But some of them have proven to be somewhat liabilities, shall we say? I don't think that they're going to be the factor, at least in this game. I think Michigan will absolutely just 3 yards, cloud of dust, Northwestern out of existence. I don't think Northwestern wins this game. Like I said, I think Michigan's defense is going to just maul them. It, to be fair, some of that's hope, but the reality also, from past experiences, says Michigan's defense should easily hold Northwestern to no more than 2 touchdowns. So that's how I think the game. That's how I think the game will go. I think the game probably ends up being something like 28, 28-14, 31-14, something like that, reasonably so. Perhaps I'm a little optimistic given how mm, Michigan offensively played against Purdue, but I do think Michigan is arguably better than Northwestern in virtually every metric. So, optimistically speaking, it could be a blowout, 42-10, but the reality is probably closer to 31-10, 31-14. That's the most likely scenario. But that's not, precluding the worst and Michigan loses, but given what I've seen of Northwestern as far, I don't see North them beating Michigan this year. So that's my finals probably is going to be something like 31-14. So, but like I said, we can't overlook a good team, and Northwestern is not a bad team by any stretch. They're just not good either. So, but that is, like I said, that's my prediction. 31-14 is my final one. And I'm really hoping that Bryce Underwood can obviously, so he had 2 turnovers against Purdue, otherwise the score would have been more lopsided, but stop the turnovers. Obviously, I feel like that's at this point, it's college sports. You turn the ball over, never a good thing, obviously, in any sport, really. But limit the turn, get him to, he doesn't have to be Superman. You can't be Superman for someone else if you're not Superman for yourself. You just can't. So get him to be, focused on track. If he can show out in this game and prove that he's a threat with his arm more than just his legs, because he's a fair runner, that will add a whole new dimension. And when it comes time to play the big boys like Ohio State, he's going to need to show that he can do that to force them to, respect the pass because you load the box in Michigan, you take away Michigan's, biggest dimension. But if he's a good quarterback, then he's got multiple dimensions. So that's what I'm hoping. I'm hoping Michigan comes out passing the ball strong and they don't let him just, on RPO plays, just take the run every time. I hope they don't let him opt out every single time. Now, sometimes that's obviously necessary because defensive formations, but, you know, he's a freshman, but he's going to have to learn sometimes. So hopefully they give him a chance to actually do that this game. So that is my take on that game. Now we're going to go through a couple of scores. These are being played today. Uh, I believe Minnesota's playing at Oregon, I believe, and Clemson is at Louisville, if I remember correctly. But Minnesota, Oregon should win this going out. Dante Moore's he's a solid quarterback. He maybe not be a Justin Herbert level, but he's fine. He's going to play well. So I think they beat Minnesota. Clemson, Louisville. Clemson is just in. They're in misery. I think Louisville has a very good chance of beating them for sure. Um, UCLA, Ohio State, not even a question. Ohio State's going to win that. They're just such a good team this year. It's unfortunate, but it's good for the Big Ten. But it's unfortunate for Michigan. Ohio State is as good as they are. It's going to be a tough matchup when time comes. Indiana, Wisconsin. Wisconsin is surprised. Uh, last week, you know, they showed up. They're not consistent though. I think they give Indiana a fight, but in the end, I think Indiana pulls that out. South Carolina, Texas A&M. I think Texas A&M very likely wins that. Don't let don't South Carolina's have it down here, but don't let that fool you. But Texas A&M is the better team, and I don't see them losing to South Carolina. There's other teams on the schedule that they have bigger chance of losing to, but yeah, no, I think they beat South Carolina. Oklahoma and Alabama, interesting matchup. I think Alabama wins outright, but I think has a very good chance of putting a scare into them for sure. It would be nice if Oklahoma beat them, but I don't think they have. There's a couple of different factors that go into that, and I don't think that they have all the necessary tools to beat Alabama. Still, could be a very good game. It very well could be. So, Texas, Georgia. I think Georgia wins this because Texas has two losses and they have two overtime wins, and they're not consistent. They just aren't. They're just not. So Georgia, while they did lose to Alabama, that doesn't take away from the fact they're still an amazing team. Kirby Smart is a great coach. I think Georgia is just better in every facet, and I think it's way too much for Texas. So, and especially if the not good Texas shows up, because then it's going to be a massacre. But if the good Texas shows up, or Georgia should still be able to beat them. Maybe not comfortably, but they should still beat them. UCF and Texas Tech. Texas Tech beat BYU. They look solid. This is a very real team. That train is continuing to roll, and I don't think UCF has any chance of slowing it down. Florida, Ole Miss. Florida upset Ole Miss last year and kept them out of the playoff, if I remember correctly. So they're going to want some revenge. I guarantee they've been waiting. I think Ole Miss takes it to Florida, just brings them out to the woodshed and puts them out of their misery, because Florida's in misery. They lost badly to Kentucky last week. Um, Notre Dame and Pittsburgh. Uh, I really think that's going to be interesting because Pittsburgh run defense is so good, and Notre Dame's running back is so good. I think that's going to be an interesting matchup. If I had to say there's an upset brewing, that might be it. But at the same time, Notre Dame could go out there and just drag them all over the field. Who knows? But I think Notre Dame still wins because they just have a better team in general. But Pittsburgh is not one team to sleep on, like I did earlier this season, and much to my dismay. BYU and TCU, BYU all day. I think they're going to be. They lost to Texas Tech, but Texas Tech is a definite top 10 team. I think BYU wins this because they're going to want to prove that they're still, even that setback losing Texas Tech, which nobody faults them for. Obviously, or 12, they only fell like 3 or 4 spots. So obviously, it was a quality loss per se. I think they run TCU out of the building. Utah Baylor, I think Utah has a very good chance of just continuing winning. They've looked really good in the past couple games. I think they beat Baylor solidly. But like I said, don't discount anybody at this rate. North Carolina State and Miami, Florida. I don't know what's going on in Miami. I think this is one of those games where they could win handily or win or lose just as handily. Carson, it all rests on Carson Beck with his turnover issues and his self accountability problems. Goodness, grown adult or kind of, I guess. But yeah, I think I'm actually going to take NC State in the upset. I'm probably gonna be wrong because I have a great way of cursing teams at this rate, but I think North Carolina State. I think they're upset minded this year. They've already done it once, so I think they do it again. Georgia Tech, Boston College. I'm sold. I'm still sold on the Georgia Tech train. I think they. I I think Haynes King is just he's while he may not win the Heisman because there are some other players who are having great seasons. I like him, so I think Georgia Tech beats BC. Iowa, Southern California. I'm going to take Iowa in the upset. I think defensively they are going to be too much for USC. USC is very good. That's not to take away from them, but I think Iowa is just going to pull it out, mostly defensively, I think. So that's my opinion. It should be a good game, though, and I'm really hoping it is. Michigan, Northwestern, I think Michigan to win that handily. But like I said, never underestimate Northwestern, especially with the home crowd in Chicago. Virginia, Duke. Virginia had a scare and if I remember right, they lost. So uh, that's going to be part of that cannibalization process of the ACC. I think Virginia they should absolutely be on upset alert. Duke will take it to you if you're not careful. They took it to Clemson earlier, so I think Duke could probably upset Virginia. I don't think it's as much of an upset as the ranking may make it appear. Tennessee's going to beat the brakes off New Mexico State. Let's not kid ourselves here. South Florida Navy. I think South Florida wins this, but Navy keeps it respectable. They're a decent team. Arizona Cincy. I don't know what to think about Cincy. They've had some ups and downs. I think, and at this point, is this really an upset if Arizona beats them? I mean, yes, technically, because Cincy is ranked, but I think you know what? I'm going to say Arizona wins because I know Arizona put up like 50, some ridiculous stat line on Colorado, and I think Arizona has a good chance at beating them here. But also don't be surprised if I'm wrong there too. UTSA Charlotte, two really bad teams. Goodness, Charlotte's the team that had like 600 pass yards thrown on them. So if UTSA can do that, they may have a chance. But I think UTSA wins that. In Ball State, Eastern Michigan, uh, some of that good old action. I'll take Ball State. Once again, not the most exciting game. Air Force Yukon. Yukon's turned their program around. They're respectable. I don't think they're respectable enough to beat Air Force, but they're respectable lately. Kansas State, Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State, what are you doing, man? I don't know what you got going on, but it ain't winning football games is not part of your program lately. I think Kansas State probably wins that one. Arkansas, LSU. So dumpster fire 1 and 2. I think the team that has the less dumpster fire wins. So let's say Arkansas, because you know less dumpster fire. All right, Oregon State and Tulsa. Oh, yeah, more dumpster fire. Oregon State. I think they'll beat Tulsa. I don't think that's a game that anybody's really going to be missing one way or another. West Virginia, Arizona State. I know West Virginia has some ups and downs this year. I think Arizona State is just a better team, so I think they win that. So, excuse me, sorry. Tennessee Tech and Kentucky. This is interesting because Tennessee Tech is, if I remember correctly, either undefeated or only one loss. I can't remember, but I believe they're undefeated. And for an FBS team, they are really good. However, there's a big difference between the level they're used to playing at and an SEC team. Let's just be real here. Kentucky should beat them solidly. However, you got to respect the effort that these guys are putting in to be as good as they are. So I think they're gonna make I think it could be they'll be scrappy, and even if they do get, beat by 3 or 4 touchdowns, that's not to take away from the effort they're gonna come in with. So, props to them for playing them, but I think Kentucky still wins. But an upset would be kind of fun nonetheless. North Texas, UAB, North Texas. That quarterback is ridiculous. He's the one who threw for 600 yards. Insane. So if he can do that, even half of that against UAB, they have a chance. Marshall, Georgia State. I think Georgia State. Marshall's struggling badly. Colorado State, New Mexico. I'm gonna take New Mexico because they played Michigan earlier this year. Don't question my logic. It doesn't exist. Missouri State and UTEP. Missouri State's already bowl eligible, if I remember correctly. And even though they can't play in a bowl, I because they came up from division. Yeah, division change. They need to get rid of that rule. That's stupid. My opinion. Once again, um, I think they can beat UTEP. I really do. That's a solid. They're respectable. They're not. They don't play the hardest schedule. So how they are against like even like a Vandy would be interesting. But I think they're going to win that. And I think personally, I think they should play in a bowl game. They earned it. Penn State, Michigan State. Oh man, battle of the bottom scraping Big Ten barrel. Ugh, ugh. Penn State. I hope they beat them. Yeah, little brother deserves his lickings. Not a fan. I don't know if you noticed. Maryland, Illinois. I think Illinois is probably the better of the two teams here. Maryland has had a lot of struggles lately. Objectively speaking, Illinois is better. So I think they're going to pull that. App State, James Madison. So James Madison, I feel, is the better team, but both of these guys, they've had ups and downs the past couple years. A couple years ago, James Madison was ranked, and they were all this, and then it just kind of fell off. So I don't know if that's a recruiting problem or what, because they can't compete with bigger schools in that regard. But I think they're a better team, so I think they win that. Middle Tennessee State, Western Kentucky. Could be an exciting game for being who the teams are. They've had some interesting teams over the last couple of years. So I think Western Kentucky pulls it out. I don't think it's going to be as bad as the level of competition implies. San Jose State, Nevada. San Jose State should win that. South Alabama, ULM. Uh, nah, I think ULM. South Alabama's, I mean, they're there. So Louisiana Monroe, those good old Cajun boys. Texas State, Southern Miss. I like Southern Miss in that one. I think they pulled out. I think Memphis, once again, haven't lost. They definitely cannot make the playoffs, but they can still maintain some semblance of respect. So I think that is going to drive them to play harder against East Carolina to prove that, hey, even though we can't make the playoffs and I believe they're out of the conference championship. I I think they can still make it a game against East Carolina. So I think they win that. Tulane should beat Florida Atlantic. Wake Forest should beat North Carolina. Bill Belichick's seat is scalding hot at this point. He has failed in so many ways, but at the same time, he'll probably get another year. But I don't think he should. FIU Liberty, we'll go Bordeaux's team. We'll take FIU in that. Coastal Carolina, Georgia Southern. Hey, look at the birds, the Fighting Birds. Let's go Georgia Southern there. Utah State, UNLV. UNLV is in a mess, so we'll take Utah State. Um, Timu, Michigan here, or Sam Houston. We'll take Delaware. Purdue, Washington. I think Purdue played their heart out against Michigan and still came up short. And I think that's probably going to be that. I think that may have had more effect than we people really understand. So I think Washington rolls Purdue. Virginia Tech, Florida State. I'll take Tech. Enter Sandman and all that good stuff. I think they have a cool stadium. Mississippi State, Missouri. We'll go Missouri. I still think they're a good team, even though they've had their struggles lately. Still think they're a solid team. So, Kennesaw State, Jacksonville State. I want Kennesaw State to win. Win as much as you can, homies. I know last year you were a dumpster fire, and this year you turned it all around. More power to you. That's awesome. It's a great story. Hopefully, hopefully they continue to play. And I'd like to see them schedule harder opponents. You know, it's, it's just iron sharpens iron and all those fancy cliches. I think I would like to see Kansas State, get some recognition for how hard they're working. Louisiana Tech, Washington State. Washington State should win that. I think they should. Boise State, San Diego State, Boise State. I think they win that, and I think Wyoming beat Fresno State. These are a couple days ago. I watched part of these games. Not impressed. I mean, yeah, they scored, but it was sloppy. Yeah, none of these were of any particular value to me. So, but the big matchups, like I said, these are going to be some big matchups here. Don't be surprised if I get these completely wrong, and don't be surprised if I'm more right than even I realize. So, but once again, just hope Michigan was able to pull it out. Those things I said, and but I would like to add a disclaimer. Some of these guys are young college kids, and our expectations as fans can be excessive at times. And while we are allowed to criticize them, we have to remember they're young men going out there playing a game we love. So let's not overdo it. So, but at the same time, I am going to say what I feel. So it all comes with all that, and there needs to be some grace there, along with some them living up to the expectations, especially with Bryce Underwood having all the money that they poured into him. So, but once again, these are my opinions. These are my ideas. Me just spitting them out. So if you like them, great. If not, hey, let me know. Talk to me. But thanks for watching. Hope you have a great evening and have a great weekend. And yeah, have a good one. Peace.